Many are calling it treason. New York City's mayor-elect has just posted a video that's standing up and picking a fight with the Trump administration. And now that administration has responded. And it's not just Trump. We're about to see how Mamdani is finding out more and more that all the political leverage he thought he had has literally disappeared into thin air, all as his political enemies are laying traps all around him, such that the only question now is, which trap will he fall into first? That is what we are about to find out. Just weeks after his meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office, where he stood by the principal's desk like an intimidated schoolchild, New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani turned heads by posting a video that instructed illegal aliens in New York City on how to evade federal agents.
Last weekend, ICE attempted to raid Canal Street and detain our immigrant neighbors. As mayor, I'll protect the rights of every single New Yorker, and that includes the more than 3 million immigrants who call this city their home. But we can all stand up to ICE if you know your rights. If you encounter ICE, these are the things that every New Yorker should know. First, ICE cannot enter into private spaces like your home, school, or a private area of your workplace without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. That looks like this. If ICE does not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge, you have the right to say, "I do not consent to entry," and the right to keep your door closed. Sometimes ICE will show you paperwork that looks like this and tell you that they have the right to arrest you. That is false. ICE is legally allowed to lie to you, but you have the right to remain silent.
Now, many are rightly upset with that. This is the soon-to-be mayor of the largest city in our nation, basically giving advice and strategy for illegal migrants who are here breaking the law, on how to evade federal law enforcement, the agents tasked with enforcing federal law. President Trump, of course, always knew that Mamdani was going to play this game, this feudal game, and he's obviously quite prepared for just that. Literally just hours after Mamdani posted that video, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, on behalf of President Trump, came out and declared that Mamdani may indeed have violated the Constitution, and if he pulls stuff like this as mayor, he may find himself in handcuffs.
You know, Sean, we're certainly going after and looking into all of that with coordination of Department of Justice, but the mayor, if he were mayor, could be violating the Constitution by giving advice on how to evade law enforcement and how to get away with breaking the law. It's really unbelievable in this country what we're seeing. Those ICE agents that you were referencing, the violent attacks that have increased against them to 1,200%, death threats against them are at 8,000%. And I want to remind everybody, these ICE agents live in these communities. That's their homes. They have their families there. They're working to keep their own kids safe so that they can go to school, they can go to church and go to work every single day. So they're there doing God's work to protect this country and enforce the law. And these politicians, if they don't like the law, then go frickin' change it. Go change the law. That's your job, is to actually have debate, have discernment, to create a law that actually puts America first. I'm just grateful the president is focused on that.
And it's not just the Trump administration that's warning Mamdani. The New York Post is reporting that Mayor Eric Adams, who you'll remember had all federal corruption charges dropped against him by the Trump administration, well, he just laid another trap for Zohran Mamdani. Quietly, with almost no fanfare, Adams picked former journalist Pat Smith to serve as interim chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, or the CCRB. That's the NYPD's official watchdog organization. It's a 15-member civilian panel that investigates misconduct complaints against cops and votes on whether to bring disciplinary charges, even though the police commissioner still has final say. But the chair of the board exercises enormous influence over the police department. He could set the direction for the board, the agenda, and the messaging for an agency with more than 200 staff and investigators. But here's the key. This guy, Pat Smith, is loved by the NYPD. He's very pro-police, and he routinely sides with the NYPD in high-profile, like fatal shooting cases. So he's a back the blue kind of guy. And what Mayor Adams did here was absolutely brilliant. The minute Mamdani takes office on January 1st, he has to decide whether to keep or fire Smith and install his own CCRB chair. If he removes Smith, if he fires him, he's picking a fight on day one with the same NYPD unions that already distrust him for his past defund the police rhetoric and his push to expand CCRB power. If he leaves Smith in place, he'll look weak and compromised to his socialist base, which thinks that the CCRB is already too soft on cops. I don't know if you know this, but Mamdani has already been forced to walk back quite a bit on his earlier demands, particularly the demand that the CCRB get final disciplinary authority, especially after he agreed to keep Jessica Tisch as police commissioner. He's now talking more about fully funding the CCRB rather than stripping power from the commissioner, which already has some on his far left-wing allies rather nervous. Adams knows all of this, and that's the point. By dropping Smith into the CCRB at the last minute, he's making sure Mamdani starts his term either at war with the police unions or at war with his own movement. Either way, he comes out of this politically weakened. And it gets worse. In fact, everywhere Mamdani looks right now, there's another landmine set for him to step on. The latest is that Governor Hochul is being warned from all sides, left, right, and center, that if she supports Mamdani's corporate tax hike, she's going to cause a mass exodus of corporations and high-income earners from the state. Now, remember, the fundamental problem for Mamdani is as mayor, he can't raise taxes. He knows he has to raise taxes significantly to pay for all the free stuff he promised his constituents, but the New York State Constitution requires that all tax hikes have to go through Albany. And Governor Hochul has already said that she's very much against raising taxes any further on New Yorkers, especially those who could pick up and leave the state, as they've been doing now to the tune of hundreds of thousands since 2020. But it gets worse, and that's because those corporations and high-income earners aren't hanging around to see how things are going to turn out with Mamdani. Wait until you see the latest real estate reports coming out of Florida. They're calling it the Mamdani effect, and it's not the one he hoped for. This is going to absolutely blow you away. But first, did you see something big just changed at the Federal Reserve? And most retirement savers have no idea how it's already hitting their wallet. On December 1st, the Fed quietly stopped pulling money out of the system. Now, it sounds technical, but here's the real world impact. When money floods back in, prices rise fast. And you're already feeling it, right? Your grocery bill, higher. Cruise or travel costs, higher. Healthcare premiums, higher, right? Every time the dollar weakens, retirees pay the price. With no headline warning them, of course. That's the danger of liquidity reversal. It erodes your savings in real time while fixed income falls behind. We've seen this pattern before, back in 2008, right? In 2018, 2020. Those who moved early protected their buying power. Those who waited ended up chasing rising prices later on. Meanwhile, look at what the biggest players are doing right now. Central banks are buying gold at record levels all over the world, positioning themselves before inflation hits everyday life. That's why so many retirees are shifting part of their savings into physical gold and silver inside a self-directed IRA, not to gamble, but to defend what they've earned. My good friends over at Augusta Precious Metals put together a short guide that explains in the simplest of terms what the Fed just changed, why it threatens retiree savings, and most importantly, how people are staying ahead of it. It's called the Liquidity Reversal Report. Go to turleygold.com or text QT to 35052. That's 35052 to get instant access. Don't wait. Every month you delay, your dollars buy less. I'm telling you, get this report and see why thousands of Americans just like you are protecting part of their retirement with physical gold. Go to turleygold.com or text QT to 35052 and learn how to get up to 10 years of your gold IRA fees paid. Click or text right now. Here's where the fallout from Mamdani's election really shows up. Not in theory, but in where rich New Yorkers are actually shopping for homes. Miami luxury brokers are calling it the Mamdani effect. Since November, they've seen a near 170% spike in inquiries from wealthy New Yorkers looking at ultra-high-end beachfront condos on Miami's so-called Billionaires Beach, that stretch of Collins Avenue packed with Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons level properties. We're talking, gang, these are one-bedroom units starting at around the eight-figure range, with penthouses at the Ritz-Carlton residences and similar buildings going for north of $40, $60, $70 million. Now, developers say buyers who were on the fence before the election literally called the day after Mamdani won and said, all right, that's it. Let's move forward. Let's do this. So why does that matter? Well, because these are exactly the people Mamdani is targeting for his taxes. He's floating hiking New York City's top income tax rate on $1 million plus earners, so the combined city and state rate approaches nearly 20% of their income, 20%, the highest in the nation. Keep in mind, that's before federal taxes kick in. He also wants to nearly double the city's own top bracket to around 11%, aiming squarely at roughly about 34,000 high-income households and big firms based in the city. Those one percenters already carry almost half of all personal income tax revenue, contributing an estimated tens of billions of dollars in state and city income taxes in 2022 alone. This is what Governor Hochul is freaking out over, the mass exodus of precisely these taxpayers, because New York State is already reeling from a prior refugee crisis that emptied so much of their tax revenue. So back in 2023 alone, more than 72,000 New Yorkers moved to Florida, taking almost $10 billion in household income with them. IRS and census data show that Manhattan, Nassau, Suffolk, Brooklyn, and Queens are some of the top, what they call donor counties, sending their people and their tax base to the Sunshine State. So when Miami brokers say the Mamdani effect is real, what they're really saying is New York keeps electing socialists and Florida keeps cashing in on the checks. That's the irony in all of this. And then again, to make matters even worse, President Trump is threatening to permanently cut off funds from New York if Mamdani gets in the way of federal ICE agents in their law enforcement duties, like he just did with that video there. Trump has already frozen $18 billion in New York City infrastructure projects, like the Gateway Rail Tunnel project under the Hudson River and the 2nd Avenue subway expansion. And as if things couldn't possibly get worse, now Staten Island wants to secede from New York City. Again, you can't make this stuff up. We've talked about this before, but they're not alone. A number of Republican-dominated districts and cities across the country have been effectively seceding from their larger Democrat-run municipalities. We just saw it in Louisiana with St. George. They're a district of about 100,000 residents. They successfully seceded from Baton Rouge and are now their own independent municipality. The city of Memphis has been steadily shrinking over the last several years because at least 3 districts have de-annexed themselves from their city limits. And now Staten Island, which is overwhelmingly Republican, about 500,000 strong, now they want to do the same with New York. Mamdani was the last straw. So let this champagne socialist flail away in his ridiculous little videos all he wants. Each and every day, Mamdani is realizing more and more that he's got no cards. He has very little political leverage. Tripwire after tripwire is being set up all around him. The question now is simply, which one will he set off first? So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And remember, make sure to click on that link below and check out our fellow patriots over at Augusta Gold. They'd love to chat with you and help you be a part of this new amazing gold rush. Make sure to text QT at 35052.